Hey, what's up, guys? It's Chase, and welcome to another exciting episode of the ELAV8 podcast. Today, Sam and I are stoked to welcome Alex Gollner on to discuss everything Apple, everything from Final Cut Pro, the challenges and opportunities the team may be facing in promoting it, as well as the broader Apple ecosystem and what we can expect.
Apple's software never enters the conversation anymore because it doesn't sell iPhones. None of their software sells iPhones at this point, really, except for messages. And so they're an iPhone company that also sells iPads and Macs and then makes a little bit of software.
Right, the first step would be creating a WWCC, a worldwide creator conference. If Apple gave me the keys to the castle and said, hey, Chase, you're hired, you're now in charge of, structuring this new vision, the very first thing is I would do that. I would say WWCC.
Effectively, if Apple can't mention Final Cut Pro in investor calls and can't mention it in product launches as a thing that actually is used by professionals and professionals take seriously, then it's not actually having the effect that Apple needs. Because it seems to me, obviously, at least for the last 6 or 7 years, number one, Final Cut Pro is to promote Apple hardware, software, and operating systems and services. And then further down that list is for different kinds of editors.
Oh. All right. We have an excited guest today. Alex Gollner has snapped to attention. And for those who do not know Alex, we have a very special guest today. Alex is OG in the Final Cut community. I don't know who ended up winning the most featured guest on the Final Cut Grill battle that Alex and I dueled for multiple years on. It probably ended up being Alex in the final analysis. But when it comes down to reading the tea leaves of what Alex, of what Apple is doing, there is no one better suited than Alex Gollner. And also making really awesome plugins and generally saying super smart things about technology. So we're stoked to have him on. There is no Final Cut Grill anymore. We had Fenwick on a couple podcasts ago. So this is the closest thing we've got. So we're reviving this, but we're trying to take it to a whole other level with ELAV8 here. So super stoked to have Alex on. And Alex, welcome to the show. Alex, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm doing fine, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're going to start with Final Cut Pro and hopefully elevate it to somewhere maybe interesting for people who are not so interested in Final Cut Pro, but interested in stuff in general. So yeah, I quite understand. So, yeah, we'll start with the jumping off point is actually when you were talking with Chris about future of Final Cut Pro, what people are talking about, features and things like that. And I commented on the YouTube video. So go to the YouTube video and look at the comments and put the comments here as well, of course. And I said, talking about features is very interesting, but that's not the problem. Because I think if Final Cut Pro tomorrow, if I could snap my fingers, if I actually could snap my fingers, thank you. If it had all the features everyone wanted tomorrow, it would make no difference to how well it's received or how its success, I think, in the world of post-production and the high end. It doesn't matter. Features are not the problem. Although they would be very nice. We could talk about features in a minute. But the problem is people in high-end TV and movies and in lots of kinds of editing, corporate video editing, event editing, they don't trust Apple. And Apple haven't given no reason to trust them. That's the problem. And it seems to me there's some kind of strange rule, which means that Apple aren't allowed to have what's called a go-to-market strategy for Final Cut Pro. They're not really allowed to promote it publicly. They're not allowed to say they're interested in TV or movies or talk about film and TV and Final Cut Pro used in those areas. Why, I don't know. So that's my initial statement. Although this is no formal debate, I still think this is my position in terms of it doesn't make much difference because it seems to me that the guys in the Final Cut Pro team, the Pro Apps team, the Creativity Apps teams will probably want to promote their software. They would want to go out there. So there's some strange rule. I don't know if it's related over from Sarbanes-Oxley or we're worried that people are going to look at us too much and there will be another court case or I have no idea. So why doesn't Apple promote Final Cut Pro?
I have a lot of thoughts about this, but I want to hear Jace's first.
Well, no, I mean, to be honest with you, I'm such a nerd fanboy. All I care about are like the things that he was talking about in the original, like the features, right? I'm a feature nerd guy. Like, I'm way more interested in your opinion of this, Sam, because this is your domain. Marketing is what you do. So please take the floor on that.
Well, look, I think this is a carryover from the time when Apple used to be the underdog and used to care about community.
Right.
And the reality of the situation is, I think Apple has now gotten to the level where it is essentially the new Microsoft in a lot of ways. They used to be battling against Microsoft. So secrecy was strategy, right? Because then you could come out of nowhere with like amazing new features. The problem is at this stage of the game, Apple's software never enters the conversation anymore because it doesn't sell iPhones. None of their software sells iPhones at this point, really, except for messages. And so they're an iPhone company that also sells iPads and Macs and then makes a little bit of software. Whereas back in the day, we used to view them as the company for creative humans. And in many cases, they're still trading on the marketing that Steve Jobs did, 10 to 15 to 20 years ago when he returned to Apple. I guess it's like 20, 25 years ago, actually, at this point. We are still thinking Apple is the same company it was then. It is not. And I think that is the thing that people like us, we have not made that connection yet. And I think the question that we should all ask ourselves, right, is Apple going to one day become the company to go back to its roots, to get back to some of that DNA that we want it to become? Because I think the challenge they're going to face is software is rapidly becoming operating system agnostic. And if they're not careful, they may not have the software to keep people on the platform that they used to have. The walled garden may become a lot less sticky as companies like Adobe, Blackmagic, et cetera, diversify.
That's interesting. Yeah, so something you said there that just kind of like spun my brain out a little bit. You said they're an iPhone company. I view it a little bit differently. I think Apple is increasingly becoming more of a subscription-based company, more specifically, they're a storage company, right? Because if you think about it, right, all they're trying to do is get someone into their ecosystem, right? So they'll use messages and they have their messages forever, have their photos forever, basically onboard as much of your data onto iCloud as possible. And once they do that, they have you in their entire ecosystem and they can sell more phones, they can sell more iPads, they can sell more Macs.
It may be true. I mean, obviously, to some extent, Apple have to prepare for the end of devices, for devices to be invisible, for their services to be distributed like dust through all the objects that are around people. So there won't be particular bits of hardware made by a company. There'll be a membership of a cloud. So it'll be the membership of the iCloud Identity Cloud or the Apple Identity Cloud. And essentially, I'm an Apple person, which means that I have all this technology around me that handles things. On the AI side, it will be my short-term plans, like where am I going to eat tonight, to my long-term plans, what's my further education going to be in 5 or 10 years' time, and how do I build up to that? And essentially, it's online services, voices in your ear, images on any visual surface around you. So that is the 2030, 2034 kind of direction. So they have to be ready for the fact that we won't want to actually touch individual specific objects in the future. Right? So you've got to create subscriptions, and that's where subscription leads to that. But what I don't understand is, what is this rule that Apple can't go to Sundance and can't have an area, theater where there are people come along, young people making movies, helping YouTubers go there and do what Adobe does? Or, in the case of Blackmagic, why don't they have the biggest booth at the show? Or if in the case of Avid, why don't they sponsor Ace or have Ace events and do around the Oscars and around the Emmys, do shows in which they actually have all the artists together on stage who are nominated? Apple could do these things. They're relatively straightforward things that maybe they would have done 15, 20 years ago. It's very strange. There seems to be some kind of strange, what is this rule? Which means this is not allowed.
I'll tell you exactly what it is. They don't. It's because they don't control those shows. So if you look at what Apple has done, all of their stuff is theoretically supposed to happen from Apple stores or through events that they largely control. And so these shows and these places, that we're talking about, the NABs, and a lot of these other places, you might see things that are Apple sponsored, but it's not going to be from Apple. And so Apple's idea is to seed some money out, but they're not going to have a direct presence at anything, for the most part, that's not owned by Apple.
But then obviously they have FMC, very nice company, but a sock carpet for Apple quite a lot of the time. Because obviously I would expect there isn't actually much profit in doing Final Cut Pro tools. And obviously didn't do very well, or Final Cut Pro in general. Last year, Apple obviously put much more money into the event, into the Creative Summit. The extent that the tickets going down from $900 to $250, or a very much lower amount for 3 days worth of content, and better access to Apple actually inside the Ring building. So why does there have to be an FMC event? They have control over it. They have control over it. They obviously control whether it happens or not. What day it happens on, that decision's probably being made around now. What leads into that decision? Why isn't that
event planning?
But what I'm saying is, why isn't this just an Apple event in wherever it is in the world? It doesn't really matter where it is. It's Apple presents Final Cut Pro. Given the fact that Blackmagic are doing a tour and they called it a tour made by Blackmagic around Europe.
But Alex, I think the key thing here that you have to really understand is the Final Cut team within Apple does not have anywhere near the leverage of other teams to do some of that. So they're not going to get the budget to go and do some of those things. And if you look around internally on the corporate side right now, budgets are getting slashed relentlessly. So it's very hard in many cases for marketing teams to do the things that they really know they probably should be doing when their particular piece of the company is not as featured as other pieces are and doesn't get the love that it probably should.
But the year before last, or there was the social media university, video university in LA. So that's maybe a more powerful department associated with iPads and iPhones and stuff like that. They put that event on, and yet it still had to be FMC doing it with iJustine with the support of Apple. And then also, of course, they do influencer events in which they get 15 or 20 Final Cut Pro YouTube influencers to go off and do an event, and then there's a complete secret. Then afterwards they make a video to say that I don't know if I can say this, but this was actually put on by Apple. Why? I just don't. That's the mystery of Apple have control over that. What's going on?
It's just a lot of people, in my opinion, not being allowed to do the things that should be obvious.
So I was amongst the group of people who put together the letter to Tim Cook. So somebody in the group said, "Let's do a letter," and then essentially I wrote version 1. And then a couple of editors wrote a different version, and then I adapted that, combined elements of mine, and then I kind of massaged the letter until I was happy. And then I contacted the journalists, and I set up the survey, and I filled in and got the survey done, and created all the permissions, and essentially made it so that became a news story. Because then, effectively, if Apple can't mention Final Cut Pro in investor calls and can't mention it in product launches as a thing that actually is used by professionals and professionals take seriously, then it's not actually having the effect that Apple needs from it. Because it seems to me, obviously, at least for the last 6 or 7 years, number one, Final Cut Pro is to promote Apple hardware, software, and operating systems and services. And then further down that list is for different kinds of editors. And new features, its product direction is based on, firstly, primarily what's coming up in Apple, in iOS, iPadOS, Vision Pro.
All right. But Alex, let's be honest, though. Do you want to know what it really is? I'll just cross the Rubicon here. I'll tell you exactly what it really is. this is what it really is, which is if Steve Jobs worked at Apple, he'd get fired. And the truth of the matter is the amount of bureaucracy, the amount of levels of approvals that are required in order to do things differently is so massive now at that company. They have so much money. There is so much to lose that the idea that any one person can just go off and do something cool, that's dead. That's not possible. That is not a thing. So like you're evaluating these things from the idea that somebody gets to just go off and do the thing that they want to do. And I'm telling you that there's 50 people above that person actively demolishing good ideas or reducing them, in a way that is legitimately impossible for cool things to get done.
So we're talking about Susan, for instance, for in recent years, responsible at the ultimate level. Now she's gone on to be developer relations VP, so she's not the boss of these apps anymore. So that's why I want to know who the current person is, what their political problem is with an app, and how Final Cut Pro can solve their political position. Okay, so whoever the VP is, what's stopping them being considered seriously as a higher up inside Apple? So essentially, instead of doing it from the point of view of, oh, I'm such an idealist, if I come up with the right idea, it'll just unlock everything. I'm not saying that. What I want to do is find the person who's got the political problem and then reframe what Final Cut Pro is in terms of a solution.
Yeah, so, Alex, there's nobody within Apple, I'm just trying to tell you, I think has the leverage or ability to walk into the room and tell all the Sony executives they hired at Apple TV Plus to say, hey, did you know that the company that you work at actually makes all of the creative software that should be possible to create your shows with? And did you know that if you actually use the tools correctly, you would save mountains and mountains of money doing this, and that you would also increase adoption of said software up and down the entire line? They run their own studio and they don't eat their own dog food, and that tells you everything you need to know.
Well, I can confirm that.
Well, the thing is that they have to go into the market of people who, essentially, in order for a producer to safely get a post crew to use Final Cut Pro,
Alex,
they have to be able to fire that team and replace them when they blame the post team for something that somebody else has done.
What really motivates people, though, in Hollywood right now? Sorry to cut you off, but this is a very important point. Money. And all you have to do is say, do you want this editing job? Because there's a lot of unemployed editors right now. And say, it's okay if you don't know Final Cut. We'll give you time to wrap your head around it, and you're going to watch these tutorials, do these things, and we're going to pay you what you used to get paid. What editor in their right mind would be like, oh, sure, I'll use whatever editing software you want?
Well, essentially, what it is you say, look, the post budget per episode on this is going to be $175,000. But this is for external production, but if you use Final Cut Pro, we'll give you more money. Produce the same thing. So we'll give you more money. In other words, you actually buy off the people doing the post workflow, because essentially what you're doing is like, look, we're giving you more to play with on your production, and we'll also train you all for free. So yeah, I mean, essentially they kind of
the post team, and then I'll let you dive in here for a second, Jace, because I think you got some things. But the post team, the thing you should know in the overall budget of the show, and I learned this on Focus. The post team is a rounding error in terms of the amount of money that's actually being spent. So the cost to integrate Final Cut into the actual workflow is largely non-existent to the overall budget of any of these shows. In fact, but what you're battling is, and this is the larger battle, is the larger mentality, even that permeates within Apple, that has been convinced that their own software is not professional. Even though it's completely professional. But it's not professional because the existing professionals don't want to change the way they work. So they perpetuate very old, very bad software, very poor workflows, because that's what they know. And if something comes in, then they would have to turn the baton over to people who know more than them. And they don't want that. And the people who are paying for these shows at Apple don't know anything about this stuff and don't really care. So the cycle just feeds itself.
Yeah, I mean, why should anyone be using Zex or anything about the post options? Because we all do it this way, don't we? We all do it this way, and it's like there's no question about it in terms of like. That's why I think if it was Pix selling it, or if it was like some people who would do daily services saying, "Hey, we'll do twice the dailies," you know what I mean? It'll be this more effective. In other words, if you kind of get, but that's detail. Because the thing is that obviously Adobe believe in halo marketing. They believe that if they get high-end TV people, feature film people to use Premiere, that'll make people want to feel less bad about having to pay every month for Creative Cloud. It's not really relevant to people using Creative Cloud. And the amount of the market, how much money they would make from the creative market because the actual high end, 3,000 editors, it's not very many setups. Adobe won't make a profit on high end feature films using Premiere or TV shows. But they believe that it's just good for the image of the fact that people will think, oh, I've got Photoshop. I don't really use the other ones particularly, but they all seem to come free with it. And I hear that Premiere thing is used in the film that I've seen. Great. That's essentially it now. It's obviously Blackmagic lead and that to halo marketing as well, because software is selling hardware. And Avid is like holding on by their fingernails. And of course, we're in the situation where they're being bought out by some asset strippers. So it's been interesting to see what they do next, who they sell it to. They should sell it to someone like Microsoft. That would be quite interesting. And in terms of like a service company or Cisco, it would be even more hilarious. But anyway, I've got to go down that line. But the halo marketing aspect of high-end TV and feature will Apple believe in because they're using it to sell iPhones at the moment. This feature film, this commercial, this WWDC was filmed on iPhone and iPad and edited partially, maybe a bit on iPad. So they believe in that kind of halo marketing and the fact that the professionals use it. But I came up with an idea recently saying, well, I used to work in the conference industry. So from like 1993 until, oh, by the way, my pretentious shirt, I forgot. I need to tell you about the fact, because I was saying that we're organizing with Chase. I could wear my normal red shirt as seen in the thumbnail, maybe in this video, but of course we can't see because it's in very arty black and white, but believe me, it's red. But the pretension is this.
1990. Oh, look at that. Worldwide. That belongs in a museum, Alex.
So a long time before you were born, Jace, there was a thing called the Worldwide Developers Conference in 1990. And I was there. And this is one of the items of clothing that was given to us excitable young pups and developers. So that's what I mean by pretentious. This is the pretension of like saying, I've been using these Maxes before you were born, etc., etc. So I just got that out of the system. I don't know why. I don't even know what.
Feels good.
We probably get, but yeah, anyway, there you go. My pretentious shirt.
But
exactly.
But you guys have been like circling around something, especially around WWDC, and I'm a developer, Alex, so I can relate with you hardcore on this. Is I feel like to get where we want to go, right, the first step would be creating a WWCC, a Worldwide Creator Conference, right? And if it were up to me, if Apple gave me the keys to the castle and said, hey, Jace, you're hired, you're now in charge of, structuring this new vision, the very first thing is I would do that. I would say WWCC. And what I would do is I would create that Final Cut certification that we're all familiar with. And I would say there's going to be a day zero transition within 2 years. I think that's how long it would take. In 2 years, every single show that's on Apple TV Plus has to use Logic and they have to use Final Cut to put out to the world everything that we're showcasing. But what we're going to do in those 2 years, we're going to invite every major studio editor on our dime to WWCC, right, to come and learn the software, as well as we're going to pair you with an influencer to help propel the message forward, right? So you have a one-to-one, you have legacy and new, and you're sitting there and you have a strategic vision over the next 2 years, and you have a day zero event that says, hey, all new shows going in development, and the year 2026, they have to be transitioned into this new mindset, this new workflow, as well as people like us who are addicted to the Final Cut workflow get to go in and strategically help direct from the top down of how all these shows could better maximize this workflow.
But the cool thing is, Apple will say, well, the Halo thing happens up to a point. But the metaphor that I was stuck having to watch 18,000 times while working on conferences in the 90s and early 2000s was inspirational speaker at the end of the event designed to inspire the masses working for the drones working for the multinational corporation. I work in F1, said the person. Here's a video of a team changing some tires really quickly. And essentially the metaphor of sport is used for business. It's a cliche, and essentially, probably in sport, they use the metaphor of business to say that there should be good sports people. It's ridiculous. But they use the metaphor of teamwork, of people putting together, collaborating with the tires. So at the moment, the halo is that creative people who want to learn editing or want to learn post tools, all that kind of stuff, they will want to learn it because they want to eventually edit feature films, which may not be too much of a thing, or movies. Too much of a thing, but let's say that's still true. No, let's make making a movie, making a feature film, a metaphor for collaboration in business in general. Let's move it out one level. So instead of saying you should use iMovie because Final Cut Pro is used to edit Dune Chapter 3, you should say, no, you should buy Apple collaboration services throughout your multinational organization. Because look, Dune is edited, Part 3 is edited using Final Cut Pro and for other Final Cut and Apple tools and Apple products and services. So essentially to use the collaboration metaphor from movies and TV, because it's complex enough to say it's a bit like being a fast-moving consumer goods company or being a bank or being a defense contractor, although Apple, of course, don't allow that sort of thing when you look at their original thing from the 80s. So what I'm saying is, maybe if you want, because essentially the reason why Apple has been successful for the last 15 or 16 years, especially, is that people had the bring your own device to work problem. So essentially, there you are, a multinational corporation, the IT department, you decide it. You say, you're going to have to use Cisco this, you're going to have to use, I don't know, whatever. Products and services that we define. But then what happens, people go to the internet and they use their iPhones and they get a service that uses less than $50 a month to actually get their team to use something like Slack. And eventually people are using their iPhones. So many people are using their iPhones that then the IT department has to eventually support it. They'll take their iPhones home. They want them the rest of their lives. You've got an IT. So essentially business is used as a leader into the real money, just having hundreds of millions use your products. So let's actually say, okay, if business really effectively is the leader that gets people into buying more Apple Club memberships, the membership of the Apple Club, because that's eventually what it won't be about products, then effectively making media is complex enough, but people think they know it well enough to say, wow, if they can make Star Wars Episode 15 using Apple product services and hardware and software, and it's all in sync, and here's the story, and it's really cool, I'd like to be that cool in my really boring multinational corporation or in my government or in my school.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. So here's the thing. If we're determining, right, that the Apple Creators Club is where this is heading, right? Jace, I'm all in on the Worldwide Creator Conference. And here's why. Because you know what's not going to get why did things get into IT in the first place is because users had to drag them in there because the wonks, and the IT, people were aggressively against anything cool happening at their companies. And the workflows that they were recommending were so backwards and so impossible and so horrendous that people had, and what Apple did was they made technology that was available for everyone who would walk into these stupid companies and be like, hey, why can't I just use my phone? Because it does everything I do 50,000% faster and better than this stupid thing that you're making me use right now that doesn't work, that requires 8 people with magic wands to wave at it in order for things to happen properly. And where the Creator Conference and what Apple, in my opinion, needs to get back into its core DNA is planting a flag around this is the way it should be. This is the way people should be using technology. And the way to do that is by working with creators and providing them the tools and having them show how they did it in the coolest way possible that gets people excited again. to drag things into these stupid companies who are against progress or anything cool happening.
So we could call it Apple Max and have it in October in Florida. Oh no, actually, there's a thing called Adobe Max in Florida in October. No, maybe we do it in November. That's the answer. No, exactly. Essentially, the problem is you're talking about Adobe Max, right? Because Adobe is two companies, and people don't realize that. There's the cool bit, which is the creative software, and then there's the money bit, which is the marketing structure and all that kind of stuff. So essentially, they do all the sexy stuff with all the famous people go along to Adobe Max, and the people say, "Hey, I'm with this Adobe Max people. We're super cool." Even though we're programmers and people think we're a bit sad, as soon as we say Adobe, people go, "Oh, that's quite cool," because they're a Sundance. So essentially, there's that kind of
Adobe's marketing is a lot better than their tech.
But I mean, the thing is, the reason why Premiere and even After Effects and Media Composer and Resolve are actually all terrible software. They're really bad. I mean, like really bad, is the fact that Apple haven't competed properly. And if Apple actually competed with them properly, then we would have gone through this phase, which is Final Cut Pro Studio 4, which is where we're at now. We're essentially in 2012. We would have gone through that in 2012, and we would have moved on to actual collaboration that's actually modern. Because bid locking is 25 years old this year. 1999, Avid, Nexus storage. Oh, let's lock those bins. Wow, it's Novell NetWare plus a few years. Wow, I can't access this directory. Somebody else has got it. And that's effectively all the collaboration is inside Media Composer. Apart from the fact that, the storage management is really good and they can add and remove storage, old-fashioned kind of stuff from the early 2000s. But essentially, if you're in post, you just go, oh, I'm blessed. At least Adobe feel they're actually competed with properly, and they've actually come, in the case of Adobe Productions, they've made it better. What's better about Adobe Productions is, if you're in the actual software, if you're in Premiere actually realizes it's part of a workflow. You see who's locking it. You send messages to them. There's actual a little hint of what should have come along in about 2005, 2006, if people had been competing with Avid properly with bin locking, that the software actually realizes what a locked bin means. Because it doesn't know. It just goes, oh, I can't seem to read and write to that one. Okay, you can't write to it. That's all essentially collaboration is. Pitiful stage of collaboration. Now, of course, what other people are going in the direction like Sequence is like, let's have 18 mouse cursors on the screen while we all edit at the same time. Which Apple are doing, obviously, in the case of Keynote. But that's also not the right way for collaboration.
So what's funny is a lot of the features you just outlined are actually native pieces within the macOS software ecosystem, right? Like iMessage is native within the system. The problem is it's not native to Final Cut, right? But to simply pollinate those APIs wouldn't be that difficult. I mean, you would probably have a harder time with the UIs. Like, how do I integrate like this chat functionality within the software and also add it to make it more anonymized, right? Because you don't necessarily want, your producer to have your phone number if you're the editor. You're like, I want to work from my hours to, whatever. But the point you're making, though, Alex, I vehemently agree with, is that the software systems within the Adobe ecosystem, they really haven't evolved, right? They've just been polishing and polishing and polishing, making the UI better, making it faster, and obviously the introduction of AI has been like the biggest bell and whistle that we've seen over the last few years. Actually, I can see you. We're gonna key in on this because that's one of Sam and I's favorite topics is AI. What's your thoughts on AI and the introduction of it? Because the reason why I'm asking, to give you some more to chew on, is that I'm sure you heard on the last podcast is that I talked about iOS 18 and how it's coming up, and that AI is going to be a major focus. And we did see some hints of AI within Final Cut. So I would love to hear your thoughts on AI and how it's coming into editing, what's its place for it, and etc.
I think it's very shiny. Oh, it's so shiny. I love it. It's very distracting. It's very distracting too. So these people are not concentrating on making basics any good. Dealing with the basics of the editing software, dealing with metadata, dealing with producing media that can be responsive. So the same piece of media will work differently on my watch that it'll do on a screen with 6,000 people watching. It should be the same piece of media. It should be the same timeline. should be a cloud of text all connected together and different bits of metadata to know how to present it. Every single device should be able to compositing it at the point of playback. As soon as I tell my phone vertically, then everything gets recomposed. It should be the same bits of media with full security built. The idea of it being squished together like a negative Meg cutter used to do it in 1954. It's essentially what we're still doing now with feature films, which is amazingly quaint. But AI is really good. I think people are fortunately going to too focused on large language models. I'm just focusing on the large language. There's so much more to AI than large language models. It's ridiculous. And if Apple are about platforms, then what's the question is, what is the platform for people adding products and services to Apple operating systems and their services, and how to integrate them and to create a store that allows it to work? So on the one hand, we go, oh, WWDC, we're going to get Siri's going to be so much better, and it's going to do this and do that. And they say, well, yeah, that's actually just an operating system announcement for something that's going to be happening in September, October. That's going to be a feature that's going to be now upgrade your iOS because it's going to have these AI features. That doesn't really change the ecosystem very much in terms of what developers are going to do in products and services. It's a distraction. I'm really interested in it, and I wish it would just grind itself through the whole process of AI. It's not that I don't want it to happen. It's just that it's really not actually particularly relevant, really, when it comes down to it, to people who are actually getting on with their work. Now, in theory, the idea is we all like to have our modes. Okay. Oh, the price mode. I mean, it's so much more expensive. The storage is so much more, so other people can't compete with me because they don't have money to do it, and all can't get a job in a certain place. So people like, or amazingly with things like renderers and node-based compositors, it's like, oh, good, the difficulty modes. Normal people can't learn how to do this. I don't want it to be easier to use, otherwise I'll have much more competition. So we have these modes, right? What these modes are there. The AI, in theory, is going to help with modes. Because the thing is that, hey, back in the early 90s, I was thinking, well, maybe I should get into this Maya thing and feature films. You kind of do all this 3D stuff. Because you notice it around, you see Terminator 2 in 1991, and before that, they had this in 89. Well, you kind of think, okay, well, because in the 80s, I used to go to a thing in London called the Computer Animation Film Festival. And I used to go to these film festivals in which they showed computer animation. And one of the first years, like in 1983 or 82, there's one where it was just waves washing onto a beach. And then huge applause from the audience. Bloody hell, those look like actual, maybe close to maybe even being waves. And at the end, a shark's fin went by and had the word fin on it. And they kind of joke out of the fact, because they're programmers and they're terrible jokes, is that fat, as in case of the French, fat is the end of the film. And that would be a thing that would be this 1992 style computer animation film festival. And then in 87, 88, it would be Red Stream. And eventually we'd see some stuff from Pixar and see some stuff from the Institute of Technology. So I knew about that. And then 1991, 92 rolls around and I see, there's actual bits of hardware you can get, silicon graphics, actual bits of software you can buy for $10,000 that you can get, or maybe go to work for a company that's got them. So we've moved on from Quantel paint boxes, and now we've got some weird, colorful cubes that are making neat things. And in the office I worked at, the conference organizing company, somebody sent us render and Pixar. I was like, well, sorry, we don't actually know what to do with this box. So we're just like, feels quite nice. So they just kind of gave it to us, hoping that we'd maybe invent something with it. So you've got these bits of, and I thought, right, okay, I'll see if I can get a job in the film industry and find out what I need to learn to use Maya. And then it turns out that 3D and 3D computer animation, none of the technology is fast enough. It can't really do the things you would do. You'd have ray tracing, but effectively you ray trace every single particle, every single bit of light, every single thing that was going on. Nothing would ever get rendered. So the world of 3D in the 90s and the 2000s is, okay, here's all the workarounds. We're going to combine all these things, all these nodes, all these 3D things, and we're just going to make a 2D texture. But if it's far enough away from you, don't even know it's 3D anymore. And essentially transition. Apple actually had a thing yesterday, or a document recently, saying how you do this for the Vision Pro. You start with the fat thing, you move it close to you, then it becomes 3D. That's how they essentially make it so that when it's far enough away from you, it doesn't matter about it being 3D or not.
Well, but
so essentially 3D animation
here, though, is
Yeah, it's the thing where the reason why I'm going on about this. I'm sorry, try and make it shorter. That I realized that doing 3D stuff is you have to find 15 different ways to work around the fact that it can't actually render it for real. So you have to fake it all with loads of stuff. And what I have been hoping for is that eventually the technology is now caught up and we've got all these wonderful GPUs and now we don't have to do the workarounds and all we have to do is write the software to say, make the funny thing fly through the box or whatever it has to be. And it actually can render it all in a reasonable frame rate, close to real time. Now, my need for that, so I don't have to work out the kind of how to bake 3D stuff and know all the recipes. That feeling of hoping it eventually will come around to be fast enough for me not to know all those special tricks and just use 3D software normally, like I play with Infinity back in '93, was that maybe it's how people feel about AI and the thing they want to do. Oh, there's editing. Oh, I can't edit. Oh, AI will make me be able to be an editor. I don't actually have to be an editor. I just define it and it produces stuff. There's probably somebody in the world of 3D saying that, and I can say I'm in the world of editing going, wouldn't it be nice if 3D kind of did all the things I need? Hey, AI will just manage to do that. So essentially, I'm being unreasonable with this AI stuff, expecting it to kind of paper over the cracks of my understanding and knowledge. For it to just, I know that most people don't know the nature of editing well enough, and you're likely that people even creating AI videos don't know the nature of editing well enough to know that how actually AI can do it. For me, eventually it won't be so. So I'm sorry this is a really long answer to your question, is the fact that let's wait and see what happens. Let's do the things at operating system level. I think the trick at WWDC is when at the State of the Union address, what they say about how Apple will let people use their ML stuff and their tools and their neural NPUs inside their chips. They'll talk about how many NPUs something has and how they just make them available and what it actually means. So other things apart from large language models, because they're so distracting, because there they are, they're perfect, they do so many different things, but in fact, there's so many things they're not good at. But unfortunately, they're the hammer, so everything looks like a nail. I've got my large language hammer. Oh, look, I've got nails all around me. No, lots of things aren't nails, and even though you've got the large language hammer. So I hope when Apple do AI, they do actually a different kind of thing associated with AI and ML, associated with Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder. Essentially, what you want is the short-term plan, like what we're going to eat tonight, and the long-term thing saying, oh, by the way, you know how you want to have that cookie? You and I developed this thing together about the plan for the future, like you can have cookies, but think about when you want to have that cookie, or maybe you should have the cookie tomorrow or later. Let's work out not having the cookie now. So essentially, you get the planner, get your short-term butler, and then you have your teacher, and then you have your mentor, and it's the same thing, and it's part of the plan. And this is Apple providing this as a membership. It's a thing that you rent because effectively it makes you more effective, whatever it is you want to be. And you grow up. You listen to everything you say, listen to every conversation you have, and then when you would have passed tests, the universities and colleges, we don't have essays writing stuff down to show what you know, quaint. Tests, ridiculous. All that kind of stuff. So essentially the future of education and training is Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder, being your conscience, be your guide, teaching you stuff, telling you what you need to know. So essentially, that's the eventual thing. And how do we get to there? And then we've only got 10 minutes, 10 years of video to go.
Sure, right. But I think the harder problem at the moment, is that right now they're using AI. The people who are designing AI are designing it to figure out ways to make their companies smaller and less human. And they are, instead of thinking through what humans actually want to leverage AI for to be able to do more and create more possibilities. So you have this issue where what should AI be leveraged into doing is can you or I get to Jupiter yet safely and be able to walk around there, breathing comfortably and manage gravity and various other things? No. But instead, the only thing we can imagine is how to make our company have less people in it and still run.
Apple have got a big edge over Google, Facebook. They've got a big edge over all the other big tech companies. And their edge is that their clients, their customers, the people that buy are individuals. Somebody buys a phone, they buy an Apple Watch, they buy an iPad. But with Google, people advertise with Google. Facebook, people advertise with Facebook. People sell through Amazon. Essentially, it's large companies doing that. They love AI because they can use AI to target people. Oh, AI makes us so much more powerful. We can go after 1 million people with just a little bit of stuff. We're fantastic. Apple's answer is, no, we make AI for individuals to defend yourself against all that stuff. So essentially all the plans that people are coming up with now, Amazon Web Services, all that kind of stuff, running AI models to, oh, wow, just with $100,000, we can give 10,000 different individual messages to these 10,000, and then we find out which message is more effective with all the various cohorts of people. So that's Amazon, Facebook, obviously, and Amazon. Yeah, Apple just go, play all you want with all that stuff. Big multinational corporations, those people are just the loss leaders for the individuals, and we've got individual AI on my shoulder. The phone never rings because I never get the spam calls because it's my AI negotiates with their AI and it defends me against all those silly AI, silly plans. Because essentially what you've got is you want your AI I don't know if you've seen Game of Thrones, but of course you have the hand of the king, right? Now the joke, of course, the hand of the king is the hand of the king. Does stuff. But I also say talk to the hand because I'm not listening. My AI will be my hand to say, look, I want to buy a house. I don't care about you real estate people. I just want to be able to talk to all houses that are all available in my locality or any locality you might think you want to live in anywhere in the world. And my AI knows what I want. When I say I want, I got my reveal preferences, and then I got my actual preferences. My AI actually knows. And then it negotiates instantly with all the other bits of AI that represent all those people, all those sellers. And then it just happens in 10 minutes. There's no kind of mucking about.
Yeah, but okay. Yes. I mean, first off, I want all of that. My only question to you, though, is like, it sounds like you want Apple's AI to be the defense against everyone else's AI, so you could just have the life you currently have.
Well, no, not my thing is that essentially AI, Adobe likes AI because essentially all their marketing part of Adobe goes, hey, we can market to we could be so much more powerful on our marketing.
I want this too, though. Like, I actually want an AI that defends against all the other AIs from spamming me and trying to scam me. I'm just like, it seems like an elaborate, non-imaginative model that is a defense against how stupid assholes are using AI to try and exploit me.
What a large language model is codifying a capitalist, white, straight, middle class, 30 years of culture. That's what most large language models are, because they're encoding all the stuff that's on the internet. The internet's made of that. Luckily, there are other ways of looking at the world. So essentially, it's going to be an LLM versus a different kind of model. Models all fighting against, so you go, oh, we've got the Buddhist way of doing it. We've got the anarchist way of doing it.
What is the Buddhist
libertarian way?
Now we're getting somewhere. What do you think the Buddhist AI is like?
I don't really know enough about Buddhism, apart from the fact that it's about not being attached to things. And as soon as you're attached to something, including Buddhism, then you've kind of maybe have to rethink your priorities. Don't really know much more about Buddhism than that, but actually it's quite helpful in the respect of course, if you have an AI that teaches you and makes you deal with what is enough, hey, I've got enough. I have reached serenity. I can't even say serenity. I say serenity. Serenity. I reached serenity. It's my new word for it now. In which I have enough. I'm not, essentially what is the point of existence now because having more is not making me happy because I keep on meeting other people with more.
So really the question you're asking is which flavor of AI do we want to listen to?
Well, each individual person will have a different AI because effectively, if I'm talking about making AI, making individuals effective, it's like, Hannibal Lecter's AI. I'll help you eat many more people. Well, sorry. We can't help that. That's the nature of that AI.
That's dark. Something you said that I really appreciate, by the way, and there are parallels to, Apple in their past that actually align with the vision of what you're, putting forward right now, which is, you remember a couple years ago, Facebook and Apple got in a huge battle off of the ask the app not to track, right? You remember that one little button? That singular button cost Facebook billions of dollars, literally billions of dollars, because they were essentially stopping the targeting that you're now proposing is going to happen with all these other, Fortune 500 companies, and that if Apple creates the do not track button for AIs, then oh my, yes, that would be a very, yeah, that would be a very, very lucrative, very smart choice, because I know for a fact, it's pretty funny. It's like the older I get, I'm more aligned with the get off my lawn person. I think it happens to every person at their, as they get older. And like, I actually understand what AI can do, like on a fundamental technological level. And I don't want AI on my lawn. I don't want it on my lawn because I know what it's capable of. And so, Alex, if Apple comes up with the system that you're proposing, oh, I'm so into that.
Yeah.
So that you see how this is their age. Their age is their ultimate customers are individuals.
It's AI antivirus. Yeah, sorry, but go ahead.
Yeah, so
McAfee.
So exactly. So essentially, it's just like I'll defend you against the there's a song by the Frankie Goes to Hollywood. I'll defend you against the hooded claw, keep the vampires from your door. We've already got the piece of music, The Power of Love. The Apple loves you. It's a song from the 1980s. Probably don't remember it.
I remember.
Back to the Future, baby.
That's the future.
A different power of love. There were 3 powers of love in 1984 and 85. There was Jennifer Rush. It's the power of love. And then there was the Huey Lewis and the News. It's the power of love. Yeah, and then there was Frankie Goes to Hollywood. It's the power of love. Anyway, 3 power of love songs. Same name, different.
Never knew.
So. Yeah, essentially, the defending yourself and Apple being able to. But I'm only saying this in general. If I think it's silly. I mean, I like the idea of Apple just could be really funny, and unfortunately, they're not quite the biggest company big enough to do this. But if they're really big, if there were 4 billion and not 2 and a bit billion, or if Nvidia were mucking up the hierarchy. Imagine if Apple at WWDC is they let this AI thing, just forget about it. And if you don't think we're keeping up, tough. We're doing what we want. It would be amazing if Apple just said, all the stuff that you're doing with this AI stuff is just like, you're just thinking in such old-fashioned, quaint, hierarchical, capitalistic sort of ways. Apple's aim is to leave the world better than they found it. Nearly all the things we're talking about with AI at the moment will lead to things not being better than we found it. And part of our definition as a company is to make things better. It would be amazing if they did that, but unfortunately they're not really big enough. And I wish they'd just go private. And then who cares what these silly stockholders, shareholders think? Because
this would be so much nicer.
They'd be so much more effective.
If you want Apple to really get back to being Apple, it's got to get back to being a privately held company, because the problem, right, and the problem with the corporate model is the corporate model works for people who don't work there. It's for passive investors. It's a parasite model. So basically, when you invest in something and you don't work there, you don't really care what that company's doing. The only thing that you're hoping is that, stock go up. Right? That's the only thing you really care about. And you don't really care how it happens. You don't care if the world benefits. In fact, you're probably like, I'd really like to see the world benefit, but I really don't want my company that I've invested in to do that, because that means it's going to cost me money, and therefore it's probably not the best investment. And Apple is currently incentivized in everything it does to support the parasite investor. And so expecting them to come in and say, the AI side of things, I don't know, is counter to how they're financially incentivized at the moment.
Obviously, on the one hand, a corporation is that which creates a customer. Okay, so what a company is, a corporation is, I create customers, and then the more customers I create and the more I serve them, that's what I am. There's no moral component to it. It's just that. But I like the idea of going privately if they could just do what they want in that respect. Because what people use companies, individuals, is they use it to contract out their selfishness and their evil. I'm a really nice person. I'm really kind. But I have a pension, and I want my pension to make money. Because when I retire, I want that money. So essentially, but I have no idea what my pension company is doing. They're just investing with the market. No, it's the pension funds, and there's people say, I believe in the power of unions, but unions have pension funds too. And essentially what happens is I'm not evil.
Also, unions are just as corrupt as the corporations they're fighting, and this is the other.
So it's just the idea of the idea. I just think it's like I work in conferences, as I said, and then I worked out, what's the most evil company I work for? Because obviously it's all just a continuum from charity that saves everybody, lots of people's lives, which I work for, and then another, so the most evil company you could say it would be a defense or attack company. They're called defense companies for some reason, but they're attack companies because they create weapons, right? I haven't worked one of those, but I have worked for British American Tobacco for a couple of days. So a cigarette manufacturing company. So that works a little bit for a couple of days. You're just sitting there going, wow, they are kind of evil. And here I am working for them, and I'm going to get paid for 2 days' work. But having worked many years and done lots of things for the Unilever company, from, going around on Gulfstream 5 jets with the chairman of Unilever and, for weeks on end, going to jungles and meeting lots of people all over the world, which I did in the early 2000s. They're not exactly evil, but they're not completely good because they create lots of need for, they have to have 2 billion people in this. They talked about that in 2004, 2005. Their products and services, even in 2005, were used by 2 billion people a day, which is they're doing quite well then. And they have to some extent create that want and desire and need, those everyday needs, and the bits of insecurity and not having enough and letting capitalism maintain their dissatisfaction thing. I used to be okay, but now I realize that my hair is just not good enough. I have this wonderful product I can use. That makes me feel better. So that's the Unilever. So they're not. And of all the FMCG companies, it's probably one of the least evil because essentially they have a patronizing need to look after the world. So they're like the Apple of FMCG companies, whereas
we can get everybody to just be less evil. Then we're really get on to something. Because there's no purely good guys. Evil's a sliding scale, right? Yeah. And so, cigarette companies are substantially worse than Unilever or Nestle. I don't know whether they're worse than Monsanto or some of the other ones, but fundamentally, you can't just be like, you can't go to the world and be like, stop being evil, right? It's not going to happen. What you can do is incentivize better action and try and get everyone to agree towards like, hey, the common good is this. So maybe we're pointing in that direction and disincentivize evil.
Tragedy of the commons, yes, and then it's a matter of opinion at a certain level. Because the thing is that the way it's a bit like I remember thinking about Bill Gates in the 90s. He's not evil, but he thinks the most effective way to do the most good is for everyone to do what he says because he thinks he's smart enough than most people. So if everyone uses Windows and uses Microsoft stuff, it's not that he actually wants to have power over people because it's really messy and feels a bit, you feel the guilty about it, right? But these people will then all be those technically efficient and they'll be doing what he controls the way the world should be doing things. So I think it's done from often, especially amongst nerds, it's done from the point of, look, we have to have a limited choice and have monopolies because then it's more effective for people like me who are smart enough to get people to force people to do things the way we want them to do them, which I imagine obviously must be Elon Musk is like that, but I really don't want you to get too close to even looking at what it's like because it's very irritating. So I think it's that kind of power and control. But on the other hand, it's really nice when mummy and daddy sort everything out for us. It's a bit like, something it used to be, you'd have somebody, we call them prams.
We all have to stop giving control over to others or expect someone else to fix things. They're not going.
Well, the funny thing is that when you see a kid in a pram, you kind of think, what do you call a baby carriage? You're like they're 5 or 6. You're being pushed around in a baby carriage and you're 5 or 6. In my day, get off my lawn, blah, blah, blah. I was walking when I was 1 year old or whatever. People weren't going around in baby carriages and they weren't being coddled quite so much. Now you kind of think, that's really bad for that kid or that. And then you think it the other way around and think, that kid's a lot easier to look after when they're sitting down and they're strapped into something and they've got their iPad. So you're managing them and they are getting a luxury, but they're less free. And it's really weird, that dichotomy, looking at that kid in the baby carriage saying, You think you're being looked after and
Crushing
you're
my
more
soul.
luxurious than I used to be, but in fact, you've got less freedom and control because you're being manipulated and being controlled by a parent who has an easier life because they're actually pushing you.
Jace, talk about that. Go.
I mean that aligns with like a few of our podcast episodes, right? We've talked about this a lot, which is like society through technology is strategically being placed in the metaphorical baby carriage a lot longer than they previously were. You know, my mom used to tell me to go outside and play. That's what she would say. Now, what you just said, and this is no judgment against anyone, right, is we have these screens placed in front of us at a way earlier age, and we're triggering dopamine release at a way earlier age, and we're creating these addictions to technology that is, like you said, is effectively coddling us.
Totally.
Wow,
Right down
totally
to when you
again.
think about, I just saw this thing that's like AI porn, right? Where you're going to place this around your genitalia, and then you're going to be able to swipe left or right on women, you know, to just go and do that in the headset, and it's going to create this fantasy female experience for men. Like, so you're just going to be having sex with like fictional women, but you know what? The zoomed out 50,000-foot view of that is, it's just a naked guy on his bed with something on his dick. And that's what you're actually looking at in your day-to-day life. And so that is a grown man who has who cannot speak to a real person because they have been so coddled that the only way that they can have intimacy is through a machine.
Thing is, that's what we're competing with. What do we do as creative people that's better than continuous orgasms whenever you want? Okay, that's just how high the bar has been set.
What's the monkey with the pleasure button? Like, that's it. That's where this is. It's the monkey and the pleasure button in a million different scenarios.
But there's a bit of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio show, because originally Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was a radio show first, before it's a series of books, which is a series of comedy books, I realize now, from the 80s that some of you may not know if are watching this. But it's a satire of modern technology and culture of the 80s by a British writer.
If you haven't read it,
and they have a little bit on them because it was originally a UK or BBC Radio 4 series. And there's a bit where a device is teaching a child about something. And every time the child gets something right, it can press a button and then he goes, oh, that feels good. And every time essentially the teacher is using this pleasure button to say, oh, that feels really good. And essentially there's a narrative trick to do a lot of narrative to explain what's going on in the plot by having a teacher explain a child what's been going on recently about this place where they all are on this planet. So at the end of the sequence, it says, oh, the child goes, oh, that feels so good. And then the teacher goes, which is the AI teacher, says, well, now press the other button. Go, well, that one, yeah. And then the teacher goes, ooh, that feels good. So maybe the AI will want to have continuous pleasure. And also that will be provided for us in terms of an incentive for doing what we define as good work, by the AI actually getting pleasure from doing certain things, but only gets the pleasure when the human presses the button.
Oh, man. Well, so, and I guess that's the question is, yeah. Go.
Yeah, we're at an hour, and we derailed at the hour itself, which is, it's kind of shame. It's a shame because this was about to go down a deep turn. Yeah.
Do we just restart it and we go the hour and because this now we're getting interesting.
Part 2, well, just like roll it right into part 2. Stay tuned for next week. No.
Exactly. I can jump into these kind of conversations at any moment and keep on going, as you can probably tell. So, well, you just got to stop.
I mean, that was fantastic. Sam, close us out, man.
All right. Well, look, here's the thing. Where Alex just left us, right? And I think this is a topic for the future that I would like to bring you back on is the purpose of the universe to hit the pleasure button, or is there something more that is there to be architected? Are we just here to, like, you know, Roger Waters had an album called Amused to Death. Is that all we're here to do, is just push our own pleasure button? You know, is that like what being what the human experience is meant to be about, and is AI's purpose only to just figure out how we push the pleasure button more? And is that the world that we're agreeing to live in here? I personally feel like there's more to it, but I think it's a worthwhile podcast.
To be continued. To be continued.
Yeah. Love that. Okay. Well, guys, and Alex specifically, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure. And, we've been around each other, Oh, he does. He's hitting the pleasure button. But it's really good treat for me, because like we've been around each other, for literally a decade now, just like in the service, like, like, hey man, how's it going? Hey Jason, how's it going? So it was real, great finally getting to sit down with you for an hour, getting to know you better. And yeah, man, we really appreciate you having you on the show.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to see your summary, or maybe the AI summary of that transcript, in terms of what that's described in terms of on the YouTube of the.
I will tell you, it does help with the descriptions. It's just like summarize, and I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna edit that. I'm gonna edit that. That's good. Hey Sam, what do you think? So yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what happens.
Look, we can talk about that for hours. Where I do think AI is really good around all of this stuff is like reducing the stuff you don't want to do. I'd much rather talk to you guys. I don't really want to sit around and do the cut downs or hear myself talk. So this is where, the fun part is this part. The rest of it, I'd prefer AI to do.
Cool. Well,
100%.
I better stop myself, because I can keep on going for a lot longer, as you can probably tell. So let's leave it there and then continue.
Save it for round 2.
Excellent.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for checking out the ELAV8 podcast. We'll catch you here next time on ELAV8. Peace.